Okay. Hey guys, Crusty Old Crow back again to do another one of the tactical perspective videos. This one being part 3 of my videos of the day called the G.I. Joe Threat Reports. The route for Root Hasbro, basically just looking down the line and looking at the past endeavors Hasbro has taken with the G.I. Joe line, both in the 80s historically and then up through the line, even in those pause gaps where I wasn't really paying much attention. You can kind of see the repetitive patterns. So part 3 in the series, I'm going to throw in the lower IED assessments and threats for what we're expecting in the line coming up. And, some of this you have to just try and use some other perspectives on, because one of these threats I thought initially was very high threat, and I was upset about it. And I find I'm coming to place about it. So of course I'm talking about Python Patrol primarily. They are the known IED threat. I won't call them a low one, but they're known. And then I will talk a bit about two other low threats in the Marauders and in the Dreadnoks, which you can consider them low threats at all, but there are perspectives on them where Hasbro needs to navigate, right? So this is all to get down that successful route where fans don't leave the convoy for their own safety, right? That's what I'm trying to get at here, and I'll tell you why I'm able to persevere through the first contact with Python Patrol here as I support this with my videos. And this one shouldn't be as long as the other ones, guys. Thank you for persevering through those. But I just find this is some of the interest I have in G.I. Joe is just kind of how it's being handled and managed, and what's being reflected through Hasbro to the consumer as what they think we want and what we want. And it's no secret, I'm very tied to this line. It has a lot of appeal to us military folks. It drew itself from the Military Veterans Society. Its creators, a lot of the creators and their creativity team were military veterans with experience in either World War II or Vietnam or Korea. And they drew upon immediately the Naval Reserve and the National Guard to inspire all the equipment and accessories for these guys. So, of course, I'm very interested in this. And of course, I have a very strong opinion of this and the personality I am. I could go on forever. I'm like Steve Rogers. I could do this all day, right? That doesn't go over well with everybody, but goes over well enough with others. And hey, you guys can always turn it off. Anyways, so that's just another way of going into the Python Patrol, because you've heard me in other videos go on about, thank God I don't have to buy a Python Patrol this week because I wanted to do a video. I've put it off and put it off because there was just something about the color scheme that they were going on with Python Patrol that just turned me off. And they were from an 89 era in Joe, I think it was 1989. And that was well into when I was leaving. That was like Night Force and everything. But Python Patrol was supposed to be this defensive branch, like for, I think, jungle operations and things like that. And I immediately, when I see these on the shelf at Toys R Us, and if they go on discount again, I'm gonna reconsider. I don't like the colors. This bright lime green on this gray, or even bordering into yellows sometimes palette that they're doing. It doesn't have that appeal to me. And it really turns me off shelling out 35 bucks to go buy even a single one of them. But I respect it. And it's like I said, as far as an IED goes, I see it and I have the choice to go around it right now and still achieve collecting my Joes. I can still build other things like Crimson Guard. I can focus on having a Viper army. I can focus on having a Bat army. I don't need to necessarily collect the Python Patrol if I don't want to, and still satisfy feeling like I'm collecting Joe and Cobra figures. So that IED, I can see it and I can steer around it. And when I look and I drive past it, I see it might not even be an IED at all, because this is how I see it. As I was coming towards it, it looked like it was going to be a big threat. I steered the vehicle around it. I don't want it. I come out the other side of it and I look at it and it's just a damn box. It's just a damn piece of debris. It was never an IED to begin with. And the reason I'm starting to have that thinking is because I see what they did is they put a good army builder out there, fast availability after the popularity has caught on. What I was upset about was a lot of us coming out of COVID and getting into the classified series late in the game, and I'm talking about figures 40 and on. We kind of, a lot of us might have missed the boat on getting the Cobra officer and the Cobra trooper at a reasonable rate. And those were the traditional Cobra soldiers. And if you wanted to have an army builder, traditional is very appealing. And having a lot of those guys would have been great. Sorry, I've got a cat down here with me. That ship has sailed, and I look online at what my options are to buy that, and in they're beyond the current price points, right? They're always above, because they're getting harder to get. So it's always like $75 for the officer or the trooper, and to collect that would be fiscally irresponsible for me at this age, I think. So Python Patrol offers you another opportunity, at least at those two casts. If I look at this from a conversion appeal, I'm very enticed, because I could see the potential of just, getting the right Krylon sprays, taking them apart, watching the tutorials, spraying them down, doing repaints. I could see how conversion artists would be easily on board on bulking these. And I think the opportunity is going to come up, because I think the market is mixed about them. Sales are seeing that they are turning into some peg warmers, and there's good reason for that. And I think that's going to be a good opportunity for guys to pluck them, especially you guys down south. I mean, Ollie's Crimson Guard, $4.99. Can you picture where the Python Patrol will go? And I see that they've done this in a way that they made it immediately fast to build, right? You've got your officer and your trooper sorted out. They've added a Python Patrol Crimson Guard to it, which was part of the original 89 release, which is a conundrum in its own. But everything that they've put forward lends to army building, and having a mixed market on it, somebody's going to reap the rewards of that, especially now that they've added the Cobra Terror flight block pod and all that other stuff. Another crack to get this thing, and maybe this thing's, because of the mixed likes and dislikes of it, if they over order based on earlier projections from the original flight pod, maybe this thing won't be hard to get, and maybe this will turn into another Duke Ram situation or Cobra Nest coil situation, where big box stores have too many of them and they go on to 50% clearance down the line. I could see this happening with Python Patrol, and that's not an IED, it's just one to me. Right, like, oh, I'm nervous about that, I'll steer around it. But somebody else figured out that was just a box on the road earlier. And other people like that. And some people might even like the color schemes, and they don't want these for conversion. They actually like Python Patrol, because when they were a kid, they were younger than me, they were in it longer, and that's the one they grew to know better. Entirely possible. That's the perspective. And that's why I kind of wanted to jam these things out loud and share with you guys. Thanks, fam. Is because negative talk about the Hasbro products can be very toxic, like morale in a squadron of soldiers. If one guy starts talking trash, pretty soon 2 guys are going to start talking trash, then 3 guys are going to start talking trash, and then they're going to direct that trash somewhere unproductive and very bad, right? And I felt like I was falling into that a little bit with how I was viewing Python Patrol. On its potential, it's got a lot going for it, and it's not really an IED. It was just a threat to me, personally. Repainting Copperhead and everything, fine. But let's talk about where I do see some risk and potential with that, is when I look at what the roster had for them back then, in 89, what they came out with, we've already been seeing, right? We've got the Python Patrol Copperhead, we've got the Python Officers, and we've got Python Vipers. We've seen all that. Python Televiper with the Flight Pod, we're seeing that coming out. Python Crimson Guard and Python Troopers. Okay, we've seen them all in that initial wave release, right? It blows my mind that they still call them Python Crimson Troopers when if I go to an actual Python Patrol pictures, right? And I go to the Crimson. Where's the Crimson in this Crimson Guard? Is it on the butt of that rifle and that bayonet and the sword and that it? Is it just that lanyard? Like, is that the Crimson? Is it the flashes? I just don't understand kind of why they went with that back in the original day and carried on with it. and what the appeal was. To me, these color sets don't work at all for calling something even close to a Crimson Guard. I would have dropped the Crimson and I would have come out with something else. I would have genericked the Crimson Guard armor as a different type of armor, and then you could divide the Crimson Guard from other iterations of that armor later. But that's just my opinion on that. Maybe there's something in the lore I'm missing, right? But there's the other guys. Like, to me, this color set just does not have the appeal with that green and the yellow. The black and the gray, absolutely. But then how you call it Python Patrol, right? But I think this needed to be subtly done, toned down a lot more, and eventually they got to that. But I mean, before this to me is Tiger Force Flint in bat form, right? Here's where they started getting it a little bit better. I thought they lessened the degree. They said, well, let's feel out that pattern on the accessories. I thought that's good. And that to me has all the appeal right now for me to go out and try and do a conversion on a couple of these, because they're achievable. They are peg warmers where I'm at a little bit at Toys R Us and places like that. Box appeal, 0. Copperhead, 0. I have a hard enough time getting behind Copperhead on the original line. I still have not picked him up because I would end up doing a review on him, and I just don't really... Copperhead's one on the list. I put him in Crocmaster, where it's doing it to complete a collection and not necessarily for your personal views of whether you like the character or not. I talked about that. And there we see the flight pod and the release of the other, the officer. And I guess there was a naming issue on and all that. But I can see these being a little bit more achievable, because when I go back, guys, I wanted to show you, I lowballed what I saw on eBay the other day for the Cobra flight pod. And I just wanted to mention that. Did I keep the picture? I hope I did. And I'm not trying to slam, sorry, not eBay, Amazon. You know what? I don't want to slam Amazon. Amazon is just one tool of many to get these figures, but $324 Canadian is what I found that thing selling for, with 2 available left. And it's the only option, guys. And I don't think the Python Patrol variant of that flight pod is going to suffer that kind of availability, I hope. I hope. Other weapons we can expect that come with the Python Patrol, I think that have potential and show kind of where we can look at maybe what's coming after the Cobra SMS. One of them that I've got is the Asp. I looked at that, I remembered that, and I was like, yeah, that's very achievable, and it's a towable toy. It'll work with the His Tank. It'll work with any Vamp repaints down the line. It's where they want to go. It's got playability. It's got a lot going for it. I can see that being both a Python Patrol and maybe even a regular release. And it goes to what I've been saying with in my earlier video about Tiger Force and Tripwire, not deviate too much, but when it comes to these branches of the conventional force, so Cobra, Python Patrol, G.I. Joe, Tiger Force, right? I think Hasbro has to put the gesture out there, or at least examine the gesture of the 2-way compatible set. I said it with Tripwire. I said all you had to do was throw in maybe a 3rd vest and one that was Tiger Force, and maybe a 2nd helmet that was Tiger Force, and you've gotten 2 figures out of the way that existed in the original line that are expected, and you're minimizing any repercussions. And I think with the vehicles, that has to get looked at as well, to maybe have paneling or sticker options that denote Tiger Force, Python Patrol, Night Force, all that stuff. I think Hasbro has to look at that seriously and say, yeah, you know what? It'd be more lucrative maybe if we made a variant vehicle for all of them of the same mold, but at the same time, are we shortening the lifespan of our consumer base by burning them out? Like I said in other videos, Hasbro's turned on the taps. They're giving you a lot of stuff right now. It's raining pre-orders, guys. That's going to get hard to keep up with when you start adding vehicles into the line. As HasLab projects become more enticing and you're trying to get people to buy into those, you're taking a disposable income budget of a responsible average person and saying, blow through that to keep up and to keep collecting it. And some of this is getting kind of a little bit unobtainable through special orders, through Pulse Premium or whatever, like convention exclusives and HasLab and things like that. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying it's something you have to be careful navigating around. So the next guys I'm talking about, besides Python Patrol, and I'll close out with that, are going to be the Marauders and the Dreadnoks, where it's kind of going well. So with the Python Patrol, where I really see a lot of potential lays in their troop builder characters. Like if you look at some of the Toys R Us line in 2001, they went a certain way with it. Now there's one I'm not excited about, but the rest I could see the potential for troop building. And for those of you that do like Python Patrol, they go into guys like Major Blood, right? And I'm not a big fan of Major Blood being done in a Python Patrol color. I am too much of a fan of, where did he go here? I am too much of a fan for that. And I think that is the popular consensus, is the original Major Blood was a ballpark Grand Slam home run out the gate for that sculpt and what you got with that figure. And it's become very unobtainable. I would love to have one in my collection to put out here to keep it relevant. If I ever saw where it was, I think I would pay the heaviest of dimes for it. But I don't want to compromise my want for a Major Blood in my collection, and that particular figure, I don't want to compromise it with this, right? And this is what I'm afraid Python Patrol would bring to the table, but maybe a lot more green, right? Like, it's to me, that is more like Voltaire and the Iron Grenadier kind of stuff. That's probably what that Major Blood is from. But if you picture the what you saw with the Python Patrol colors being applied to Major Blood, it becomes a deterrent to almost be like, don't do Major Blood, just leave them, right? But if I were to go back, yeah, there's another picture of it. But if I go back to my list there, they had a lot of troop builders come out in the 2001 iteration of it, right? So some of them were, where were they? Laser Vipers, Heat Vipers, Lampreys, Saw Vipers, and Rock Vipers, right? And so just an idea of what those might have looked like back in the day. So Laser Vipers, which one's this? Heat Viper, pardon me, right? Sorry, Heat Viper, Laser Viper, is another Heat Viper. That one, I'm thinking that's definitely Python Patrol, but it looks more like an achievable nut version of another Alley Viper. And then you had the Saw Vipers, so you had some fire support for your Vipers. That is one I would look forward to seeing, guys. For a couple of reasons. One, it's muted down enough to be subtly worked into a couple of different themes. You could work it into a Viper army. You could work it in next to a lot of other current troop builds. You could stand that next to Scrap Iron and it would almost be an individual character. And it's a section support weapon, which, you know, if you're building army builders, you have to look at how a section is laid out. Not everybody is going to, you're not all going to have the conventional M16. You need to have some guys with some heavier firepower, support weapons, sustainability, some that use the same caliber of ammunition at a higher rate of fire, and some even heavier than that. And you need that within your section for your section to win a firefight against an enemy that's dug in, or that can equal your rate of fire at times, right? You want to take advantage of that. So the Saw Viper, I think, is something that Python Patrol generated that I think needs to come to the table. And I hope they don't just do it as a Python Patrol. I hope they find a way to work that in where it works well with everything else. And then you had your Lampreys, right? So if you talk about how hard the Cobra Eel is to get right now up here in Canada, or at least in Ottawa, I saw that one, another Amazon find, and that one was going for well over $100, and that was recent that came out. It's just somehow that got sucked right up. So the people, and I think it's that troop build potential again. So again, I think if people want another troop build, the Lamprey is going to come out, and just other variants of that, right? Rock Vipers. I expect to see Rock Vipers right after Alpine at some point, and perhaps around the Frostbite and Arctic troops. I see Rock Vipers and whatnot coming out. So Remembering that the Python Patrol is an elite unit of troopers that have been handpicked from various Cobra Viper units, right? So that's why you saw so many Vipers in those editions. They're specially trained for stealth and infiltration missions and whatnot. They wear camouflage units to mask their presence and confuse G.I. Joe radar systems. So the reason I wanted to bring up Python Patrol at the end is was after Night Force, because I talked about what the purpose of Night Force was, and it was all that cybersecurity and defense, right, and all that stuff. And that's why I think Python Patrol makes sense for it to be out right now, is because it's co-marketed with that Night Force release, which is still in. It's still trickling through, and the Night Force goes into the Transformers, it goes into the Dark Energon, it goes into the movies, and blah 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 blah. I talked about all that before, so it absolutely makes sense. I just don't quite understand why the design team looked at some of the troop builds with the big bright colors and said, you know, we can update Shockwave, we can update some of these other Joes, we can take some risks with Tiger Force and other characters, but we're not gonna mute this down and modernize this. We're gonna jump the shark like on this one a little bit, and we're gonna go bold strokes. Yeah, bold can big risk, big reward, but I don't think Python Patrol is necessarily the best example of that. But it is a very useful and resourceful line out right now, and I do have a renewed respect for it. I'm not going to collect a lot of it, but I think I will buy some of the troop builds and try the conversions, because the appeal of that product is there. So Python Patrol Crimson Guard out of the way. Let's talk about Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders before we close out with the Dreadnoughts on this one. So Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders is another one where I'm like, that's not an IED. It could turn into one, but I think if they see it coming, they can plan around it and they can do it right and do it well. Is the Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders. All right, so we know Sergeant Slaughter had his own little task force show up. I've only seen limited exposures of it from the cartoons and whatnot, but I think there is a demand to continue that line a little bit, and I think there's definitely some temptation for Hasbro to do it as well. So I talk about their roster, and again, I don't know everything about this, right? So if I talk about it, and again, I don't own any of my images. I'm pulling this all off the internet, Joepedia, YoJoe, all these other great resources online to just quickly get your Joe knowledge up and know yourself the battle. So they're the highly specialized fast attack ground, a strike force unit that they're like a flanking force for the Joes that Slaughter drops in and terrorizes. We see his smasher tank in the cartoons all the time and things like that. I think that's what it was called. Anyways, the roster back in the day, I mean, in the movie cartoon where Falcone joins them, you know, you had Red Dog, Mercer, Bull. They were all in it. But later, more Joes came in to join Falcon with the others, right? So I see one of the first earlier repaints that I really took notice of, and I asked why, was Barbecue, right? So over here, Barbecue. Yeah, I put them in my collection. There was two choices when I could do it. One was achievable, one was not. It was the Viper Island variant is the traditional variant, and then we had the Marauder Barbecue variant, which was traditional to the Marauder idea. Oh jeez, I just totally took Slaughter for a drop-in. I lost his glasses, but there they are. Yeah, well, you could use some humility. Anyways, I wasn't a big fan of the Barbecue figure at all, but it wasn't about the colors or Barbecue as much as it was just like the relevance of Barbecue and amongst these conventional fighters, like the Firefighter Extraordinaire, sure. But if you look at the roster, here's where we pull some prospect, I think. Footloose was a Marauder in the same color scheme as Barbecue. So if and when we get an original Footloose, who knows? But a Marauder Footloose might actually be the first one out of the gate. One of my predictions videos, I said that we probably see one in a retro card maybe before. But moving down the line, Low Light. Why not? You're gonna you're already getting a big fan base after your low light right now. That's on that just came out over this summer, and you did the Night Forest Tunnel Rat. So do the low light. You know you're going to. See how that works. Mutt with Junkyard, I can see that coming. We know Mutt and Junkyard are on their way. The pre-orders are up. You can get your pre-orders in for them already. Same batch with Metalhead for the Iron Grenadiers. However, what's the backlash if you do that right away? Should you do the Sergeant Slaughter repaint, or do you need to? Is that enough difference from the original Sergeant Slaughter to justify a repaint when you made such a great swing at the gate with your original? How can you follow this up? And this is still on shelves in big box stores and like Toys R Us, and this was back like in the mid 50s of the line. So, and we're up to over the 108 or so. So availability wise, do you want to risk doing a remold with that? And then we've got Spirit Iron Knife, and I do think that perhaps I would accept definitely seeing that one redone for Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders, only because Spirit Iron Knife I feel is one of the most respected classifieds out there among the fan base. I think most of us were impressed with how well they did with this particular figure itself. I know that it's becoming unavailable as time goes on, and that will probably jack up the price for anybody coming in late to the game or joining the party. So maybe a Marauders Spirit Iron Knife would be good. If we talk about the original core, yeah, you're going to want your Bull, you're going to want your Red Dog, but let's talk. Everybody wants Mercer, guys. A lot of the talk at a convention stuff and everything comes back to Mercer. There was a big happy fan base about Mercer, and I think he was a Crimson Viper. I don't think he was a regular Viper. Maybe he was a Viper officer. I thought his vest was red. And I think it's time for him. I think it breathes a little bit of life into a Viper market that's starting to fall flat with too many variants, and especially I think the Python Patrol kind of damaged that Viper market, same as the Bats. But who knows? Maybe that's just my opinion. Anyways, I think a Mercer figure is overdue. Going into the vehicles, Sergeant Slaughter's Smasher tank or whatever that was called, I can't even remember. The white tank with the 4 tracks that was blasting through front lines, when we got introduced to Sergeant Slaughter and his Marauders. I think that's on its way, but most importantly, I think that's another opportunity, again, like I talked about with Falcone, to take one more swing at trying to get a good Falcone out there, because yeah, it's hard to find any positive feedback on Falcone, and I think he's a blemish on the series. You want to not just correct, you want to overcorrect almost to make it good, right? Make it a well-respected figure as opposed to a widely criticized figure. So that's what I would expect from Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders. So do I see an IED threat here? No, not really. I think the color set, when you have them in a uniformity purpose, like the way that they did back in the original line, and you see that they're off to that start with Barbecue, I think there's room for that. I do. And so long as none of them are like hard to achieve deluxe sets or any of that stuff, and they're all obtainable, I think that's an okay way to go. I don't see an ID threat there, and if so, it's low. The last ones I'm going to talk about are clearly the Dreadnoks, guys. I find a low IED threat with the Dreadnoks, and I think everybody more or less thinks the route's more than clear with the Dreadnoks. But I think we have to not get complacent and proceed with caution when it comes to the Dreadnoks as we advance down Route Hasbro. And just remembering that too much of a good thing can always happen. Right, so if we look traditionally through other genres of popular culture and things like that, if you're a comic collector, you remember the days that Deadpool became oversaturated in the comic market, and you were tired of seeing his face everywhere, and that started to happen again recently. I think people, as the movie comes out, they're like, okay, slow down. I'm not film in comics. He's everywhere. Wolverine was like that for a while. There was this. an oversaturation. More recently, we're starting to see this with Disney properties and the Star Wars line. I think people are willing to take a break from Boba Fett for a while, and I think that property got compromised through oversaturation, right? So we got, and that's the Mandalorian as well. I encompass Boba Fett and the Mandalorian into one big slop, and I like Disney. I like those properties, but I'm just not a big fan of the story being told in that right now. Anyways, I digress. I want Hasbro to really be careful not to do that to our beloved Dreadnoks. Right now, the pre-orders are in on 2 of them, I think, and that is Ripper and Buzzer, and I'm very excited to go pick these up next week. I think I'm expecting Buzzer, and Ripper will probably show up shortly after that, as well as my pre-order on Hawk, and that should be it for pre-orders for a couple months. But while they've done a great job adapting these, and everybody is, sorry, I'm not doing this iPad very well. These are fantastic figures. I think everybody's looking forward to. I haven't heard any early negative criticisms, aside from something to do with the sunglasses on Buzzer. Somebody said something about it. I don't even recall what it was. Overall, I'm very excited about these and getting these into the line and adding to what is currently limited to Zartan and Zorana, right? So they're getting some company, and we have a lot of speculation about what the new Torch will bring to the table, which we know is coming. I think Torch, and I think after that it's supposed to be Monkey Wrench, and then we're hoping for Thrasher and his Thunder Machine, right? So we know the road ahead for the Dreadnoks. We like what it looks like. We're big fans of it, and with Torch, we're given a couple of little tidbit promises, and one of them being new blast effects, which are to include flamethrowers, so the flame effects for his flamer, and I think that's very exciting and lends the way to what I was saying in another video about perhaps seeing Charbroil come out to resurge Barbecue, because we see Barbecue and the guy looks lonely, man. Without the Marauders and without Charbroil, I mean, in my collection, my Barbecue looks lonely, boys. So the Dreadnoks, I am really psyched about that. And of course, when we talk about the Dreadnoks, you heard me talk really quickly about the Thunder Machine and Thrasher. The reason being is because that is essentially going to be your Dreadnok Vamp kit, right? Like, you can't tell me that's not going to be sitting at the exact same price point that Clutch and the Vamp are coming at, or within a couple of dollars of that. Maybe it'll be a little bit more because they'll give you like more to do with it. I don't know. Have no idea. Don't care. Looking forward to it. Big fan. Big fan. All right. So that's the assessment of the Dreadnoks and the Sergeant Slaughter's Marauders. I think those are low IED threats, but it's just you stay on the hard pack with these. You don't get off the route, and you're almost at the front gate of where you're going. Just go, push in, but slow down after you get there, right? Don't overdo it and don't underdo it, because the last thing we want to see is the Iron Grenadiers go south. We're seeing some potential with the Iron Grenadiers when we look at guys like Metalhead, which is coming. And we want to think the best out of it. We know it's going to ultimately result somewhere down the line, I'm sure. And guys, these are internet productions of some other fantastic artists who I should be giving like some credit to. I just don't know their names. It's Google searching. But I'm lending their creations on their interpretations of those characters and what they could look like with classified. So there you have Voltaire and Darkon, or whatever his name is, right? You can see these guys coming into the Iron Grenadier line down the road, but with it comes another troop build, and this is where I'm saying, like, just be careful and stick to what works, because that is a palatable troop build to me. That's in the same vein as the Crimson Guard. That sits easier to understand and maybe think about an enemy when they're not throwing up bright green and gray in your face. I like the Iron Grenadier idea. I think it'll go over well as a troop builder. And again, credit to Strawnox here on his rendition of what an Iron Grenadier figurine would look like, right? And sorry to use your image without giving you, $1 billion, but like, that is exactly what fans want for a troop build out of the Iron Grenadiers, I think. Anyways, guys, so that's another one where it's like stick to the hard pack, and I'm really optimistic about where Hasbro's going with some of those Cobra builds, and it makes me have a more forgiving perspective on the Python Patrol. All right. So I think that's where I'm going to end this one, guys. The last guy I don't want to see out of this, but maybe as a PulseCon exclusive, maybe they do modernize it. It would be funny to see, but guys, you talk about the IED threat that comes back from the past, you know, like maybe a shout out to one that we just gave into a trend of the Chicago Bears and their great 80s, and we do a fridge parry. And the only reason I even draw attention to this is when I see the Big Boa digital render and I see Big Boa being thrown into the line, I'm like, give me fridge parry. Just give me fridge parry instead. Stop Bears. Anyways, guys, that's it for the tactical perspective and for this G.I. Joe, threat report, part 3. I think I've covered enough on these. They've gone on long enough, and thanks for sitting through them. Those of you do. Those of you who have comments and discussion points and have been bringing them forward, thank you very much for doing that. Keep it up. Those of you who like the video, go ahead, subscribe if you want to subscribe. Feel free to share these videos or any of my videos on G.I. Joe stuff as you will if you know of somebody that'd be interested in it. Thanks again for walking with me on my insane little path, guys. We'll see you next time when I get another figure next week. Bye.